of tune.
Yeah. Is it out of tune or sang out a tune? I defer to your expertise.
Oh, gosh. I have. Wow. What would you do if I sang out
I guess it would, well,
a tune
because
or
singing
out?
out of
So
tune,
the lyric, is this
we're
recording? Because this
starting,
is something
baby.
I'd like to, are we live on YouTube?
Yeah, we're live
Okay,
across
we're
all the
live on all
media.
the YouTube.
You
I
know how
am
when
going to
Joker
Google.
takes over all the TVs in Gotham City? We're that
Yeah.
right now.
Okay. I'm looking at, excuse me.
Oh,
I'm
baby.
going to look up the Beatles, excuse me, the Beatles lyric. Not the Joe Cocker version, the Wonder Years theme version. So, Beatles, with a little help from my friends from Sergeant Pepper's 1967 album. Sergeant Pepper's and Abbey Road, probably my two favorite of Beatles besides their early stuff, because I generally like earlier Beatles than later Beatles, even though it's great. So the song begins, Billy Shears, do 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 do. What would you think if I sang out of tune?
Okay. I
What
wasn't
would
saying
you
you were
think?
wrong. I genuinely
No, no,
never
no, no.
considered the lyric.
No, I think that is a great question, because when you said that, I was like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. But what would you think if I sang out of tune? Not what would you do if I sang out of tune, which
Is the Cocker, what would you do? Does he change it?
I'm gonna
Because I'm
check
not gonna
that. I'm
lie,
gonna
that's the
do,
version I know better.
yeah. What would you do if I sang out
Because
of
of
tune?
both being a TV obsessed child and
Oh,
the
I love the
Belushi
Wonder Years.
impression of that version.
Yes, 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 100%. Have a little help from my friends. I think it's just a better version, just top to bottom, T's to B's. So Joe Cocker's, what would you do if I sang out of tune? So it's out of tune on both, not out
Okay.
a tune, which I think is also works as lyric. But
Well,
the
because it would
Beatles
be
one,
annoying
what
if
would
your
you?
friend just started
Yeah,
randomly singing when you asked him, like, let's say a simple question, and he sang three different versions of a song instead of just answering it. That would be annoying, right? But
what
if you
I think
sang
is
out of tune,
interesting
that would
about,
also be annoying, especially if you're, say, in a band with three other dudes, and part of your job is singing good, and you did it bad.
well,
Would you then stand
it's
up and walk out on them? I
it's
would.
it's Ringo too. So it's like Ringo's like, look, I know when it comes to the breakdown of who are three better singers than me, not just in the world, but in this band.
You have you done nothing but smoke 4 packs of cigarettes a day since I last talked to you?
No, I've just been doing Joe Cocker impressions, apparently.
Yeah, that's you.
Oh, what you do if I say? Um, but I like lyrically, what would you do if I sang out of tune? The do and the tune, there's a soft rhyme there. That sounds way better. So the Ringo, what would you think if I sang out of tune? The question, what would you think? It's like, I don't know. Maybe I'd think you
Yeah,
should be a better singer if you're
right.
in one of the biggest fucking bands in the
We probably
world.
wouldn't even tell you, Ringo. We would all just continue to not take you as seriously for some reason.
Yeah, we'd give you Octopus's Garden. Um, but Joe Cocker, what would you do if I
It's a
sang
more
out of
important
tune?
question.
I think it's like, well, what would you do? Like, would you be cool, like, with the vibe? Like, I just started singing, it's out of tune, but like, I get why you're singing because you just gotta sing.
I'd be annoyed with Joe. That's what I would
Oh,
do.
and then it's so, what would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out of me? Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song, and I'll try not to sing out of key. So he's real defensive.
Yeah.
He's like, look, I'm gonna start singing. It might not be in tune, but I'm gonna try my best. Please don't leave me.
This is happening. How what
This
you do
look,
next
this
is
is
up to you,
happening.
but it's gonna go down.
Then it's, oh baby, I get by with a little help from my friends. So now I conditionally need you to stay here and be tortured by my terrible fucking singing.
See, I get by making audiences scream that they love me at the end of shows.
You get bye bye.
That's how
You
I
get bye bye.
That's how I pull it off. Um, here's the theme.
That's how you pull. That's how you pull it off.
That's how I
so dirty.
jork it.
There's a new groove in town. It makes your body move around. If you got some moves to show, then do the disco daddy-o. Disco daddy-o. Exciting and new. Disco daddy-o. If you wanna learn to dance, this is what you do. Find a lady, make a baby, get a little money for being kind of funny. The world is burning, but you are yearning to make a stranger laugh with the undeniable humor in which you have. Disco daddy-o. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh. Disco daddy-o. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh, hey man, let's tell them where you can show off your disco daddy-o moves anywhere. In a basement?
Yep.
At a restaurant? Oh yeah. A school gymnasium? Sure thing. A symposium? That's right. Rest area? Probably. Public restroom? Well, I don't know. Who books it and what does it pay? Do the performers get a bar or a food tab in this dark and scary alley? Why? Is it like a cool alternative comedy show that the gimmick is that it's in an alley? Does it have to be dark and scary? Should I fear for my life? If I do this show, will it be a cool credit to have? Or am I not gonna make it out alive and never see my wife and kids again? I'm so scared, but I need the stage time. Yeah. Disco daddy. Oh.
I had to look up that it was in fact longer and didn't just feel that way. Usually they're under a minute.
Yeah, but when you have gold,
Right.
You tell
it
Ringo-
earns every second of
Yeah.
that. Minute 47.
right? Yeah, because I thought about cutting some stuff off the
No.
top, but I was like,
I love
man,
when they're
you
like,
can't.
here's how you do the dance. Have a baby.
Look, it's the buy-in might not be worth it.
Yeah. All the examples of terrible shows. I was like, I've done actually a lot of these. I almost did one at a rest stop. But Brian Barganier, the creator of Dave Piss, who I know you and I have talked about a lot. I don't know if we've brought him up on the show.
Hey, Pierce.
He does this character on stage, Dave Piss, and it's got like an audio drop that's just him going, Dave Pierce. And I say that to myself
Does he let
400 times a day.
for clarification for myself and for the listeners, does he let the audience know that he's doing a character named Dave
Yeah,
Piss?
yeah. Oh, it's very clear.
Okay. I didn't know if it was like a fucking, Larry the Cable Guy.
No.
Like he comes up on stage, but he's not like, hey
No,
guys,
he performs
I'm gonna
himself
do.
normally, but put out.
Okay.
God, I think there's 2 Dave Piss specials. The first one I know I've definitely watched. The second one I don't know if I did. Brian and his wife Ham, recent daddios. I think a couple months ago they had a baby. Congratulations, friends.
You think Dave Pierce is the Reddit poster?
No.
Have we narrowed it down? Has anybody stepped forward? Has that evolved? Is there any follow up from that from last episode?
And the what's it called? The responses, the replies are all still pretty uniform, in line with what I put. He did write back to mine, thank you. I didn't say, oh, by the way, Ricky says kill yourself. But he
Nobody was on my bandwagon. Like nobody was selling that narrative.
Well, no, because you're mean and wrong. Is I think
No. You agreed. You said, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just think
you said
that there are other options.
You said, if you're thinking about quitting, you should quit. And I said, no, quitting is fine, but I don't think anybody who doubts anything should just immediately give up on that thing. You know? That's beta shit.
Yeah. but that's steps.
This is maybe hard. I should give up immediately. That's what Ricky would do. What are you talking about?
No, I'm saying if I'm having these struggle, you and I talked about this last time. I would have a Glenn. I would have other people in the comedy world that I would have this conversation with, especially with his time and experience. Or, you know what? He just had a baby. I'm going to guess he didn't shoot it out his pee hole. I'm going to guess he has a partner that had that baby that he could also have that conversation with before going to the internet and being like, hey, slobs and randos,
Oh,
please tell me how.
look, I will agree with you wholeheartedly that asking r/stand up for advice is not the move. But I mean, if that's the community, like people have different
There it is.
communities.
Boil it
different
down.
areas.
That is where I'm coming from, and I'm not sure if I fully articulated that
If
last time.
I
It sounds like it's the same as telling everybody that you're quitting comedy or retiring or blah blah blah, or like I think I need to step away. It's like, cool, just do it. Nobody's gonna be like wondering, being like, oh, this actually also applies. Do you know what ooh, I'm gonna mispronounce it. Jeksu, a
No,
Japanese word.
I don't know any Japanese.
Let me Google it before I become a complete moron.
I know so very little French, and I would say an okay amount of Hungarian at this point.
I don't want to tell you what the word means. Let me look it up first. Yatsu. I'm trying to. It's JO with a line over it. HATSU.
Sure.
Are you familiar with that word?
No, I'm barely listening to the
Yatsu,
spelling. I'm on so
Yotsu.
much there. I don't know. This is not a good episode. Tune out.
So
Go listen to something else.
Yatsu.
Ricky sounds
I
like he's
think
been
our
eating gravel, and I'm flying high on a double dose of Theraflu before the recording.
Woo! I think our breakdown of I Get By With Little Help From My Friends is solid gold as well. But I think the Daddio disco,
Top
worth
notch.
all your money that you're paying to listen to this podcast, which is. But the Japanese word for disappearing is yatsu, which literally translates to evaporation and refers to a phenomenon of people intentionally vanishing from their lives without a trace in Japan.
The dream.
This is such a common thing that people, based on whatever anxiety or stress that they're having in their lives, they could have a full-on family, they could be running a giant corporation or business. One day, they just not be there.
Oh, I'm gonna get this
And
tattooed on my nuts.
they just not be there.
No, whatever
It's
that word
such a
is, I'll
common-
go back and listen to the spelling.
It's such a common thing that they have their own word for it. There's a documentary that I'm interested in seeing. So no one in the comedy world is just doing that. There's all this pomp and circumstance. So again, if I didn't articulate correctly last time, my feeling of this guy posting this to begin with, it's you're doing this to tell us that you're awesome.
I still don't think that at all. I think if I was having serious doubts about something, there's like two people.
So many levels of other places that I'm
There's
going
like two
before
people
Reddit.
I would run that by. But it's easy to be like, oh, let me just throw up a burner account on Reddit and drop it and see what other stand-ups or whatever group I'm having doubts associated with, I'm not going to ask 40 of my comedian friends, hey, should I give up comedy forever? And then have them tell me, no, Glenn, because you're incredible. But then they will always be like, man, remember when Glenn almost quit comedy because he was so sad? I would rather just drop it in as a random account on Reddit. What if it was me? What if I'm whatever the cat's name is on Reddit? Frosty Economics. I'm not. I've had my children for a while now. It's not.
Holy man, like if you are Frosty Economics and then you're using your non-burner as Glenn Tickle to reply to your burner,
myself good
you've got way more going on.
That's some Elon
than
stuff.
worrying about quitting comedy. Yeah. To bring up another thing from last episode, I proposed woke breakfast tacos joke and scenario that had happened. I found out the rest of that story.
I saw you posted a clip of you doing it, and there was more to the story.
because I heard more of the story and I was like, oh, I was searching for an avenue to go to bring this up on stage. I wasn't sure what more of there could be. And I was telling my friend this who had the experience with the father-in-law, and he was just like, well, you know how it ended up. And I was like, no, you just said your father-in-law, you all were having breakfast, and he just was like, breakfast tacos are woke. And I was like, I thought that was enough to be amazing. And he said, no, he's like, we were at First Watch. I was like, you were in public? He's like, yeah, First Watch, a breakfast place. His father-in-law is looking at the menu and reads breakfast tacos. Breakfast tacos are woke, and says this out loud. Again, looking at it and thinking, the climate we're in for knee-jerking and saying that too many things are woke and they're just shoving them in his face and he can't fucking stand it anymore. He thinks in his brain that they put breakfast tacos on that menu recently because First Watch is such a liberal propaganda breakfast machine to just piss him off in the morning.
I'm surprised that's where this happened, honestly.
Yes, it's awesome because I'm like, yeah, First Watch, though the wait staff is typically grandmas and theater students. That's what it kind of looks like.
Is it not? Is it like there's not one near me, so I'm not that familiar, but I've seen them around. I guess I always just kind of assumed it was like, you know, Black Rifle
Cracker
coffee?
Barrel. Yes.
Where it's like,
this is like coffee for men who love America. Oh, don't drink that wussy coffee. This is good. We shoot our coffee out of a gun.
Is that not what it is?
No, there may be like it might be rooted in like the First Watch of like it might be connected to firefighter or something, but that's not the that's not
like,
the
is that a Game of Thrones thing? No, it's the Night Watch.
The night. We as members of the First Watch.
I don't know. Like I said, there's not one near me. I've seen them around. I don't think I've ever been in one. I mean, you know, from when we went to Florida when we got coffee, I would rather find like a small 100%. Place.
It's a trendy cracker barrel, and they're always very busy. But so he read breakfast tacos on this, went on his rant that we discussed last time. It was at First Watch, news to me, which I just all specifics generally make comedy better. And getting more of these specifics, my friend who doesn't do comedy, he's a writer, Eric Hunter, he was just like, why is this tickling you? And I was like, because each little nugget more that you're giving me is making this better. So he was in public. He was at this busy restaurant. He read this, just where his brain's going. And then I found out this dude proceeded to order them.
Yeah, that was the twist that I did not see coming.
I loved it because I'm like, this is the bit now. I'm just going to tell this as it happened. So, you know, we ran a gag last episode where we're just like, oh, where's his brain going? What is he thinking? You're not the good guy if you're anti-breakfast tacos, but he thinks he's the good guy. And he's challenging this. But what I love is first he's thinking, well, they just put this on the menu because that's where we're at right now. They're just everybody's being woke and they just got shoved in your face. But then it was almost like someone confronting their sexuality. And they haven't been honest. And they were just like, breakfast tacos. Gross. What? Yeah, I'll order that. Wait, what am I doing? Oh, God, here they come. Oh, no. Oh. Should I eat them? Should I put them in my little mouth?
I would never kiss a boy. That's yucky. All right, well, I mean, I should do it just to see what it's like. I should probably like just try it one time. All right, look, it's fine. It's pretty good. I'm not going to, the lips were pretty tender, but don't tell nobody. That's your bud's father.
That's what it is. Yeah. That's what it is. And it's so funny that like he makes a stink and then he gets them and then he eats them.
Choke on them.
And he was just like, oh man, those woke breakfast tacos were real good. But then makes everyone in public at this table, like, does he tell the waitress? Like, you better not fucking tell anybody.
You got to order these for me and then we'll switch plates when we get here. I don't want to ruin my reputation as a hard body, big boy.
Yeah, brother, sometimes the waiter,
Oh, see,
they
I think
put
Macho
you
Man would
aside
throw down on some breakfast tacos, no question.
100%. But my generic wrestler is a combination of Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair and Randy Macho Man, but it's Macho Man voice. But it's none of the racism or sexism or grossness
Because I'm banging
or
anybody's wife.
cocaine. Yeah. And saying the N word is like, why? Like, why were you? Anyway, he's like, oh, yeah, brother, sometimes the wait staff, they assign you to a seat and they say breakfast tacos are going to seat 4, but we got to switch seats, brother. I don't want to be documented as having ordered those woke things.
No paper trail.
No paper trail, brother. That's a good voice to do when your voice is already being lost.
Yeah, it's not far off from how you sounded for the rest of the episode.
They're like, I don't think Ricky's doing a voice.
I think he's dying.
The other, so that tickled me that there was more to the story, and then I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna.
You know what?
I'm gonna tell that.
Me? You know
What?
Nothing. I just wanted to use your name the way you used mine.
Tickle. What tickled you?
You said, "What tickled you?" I said, "What glored me?"
So today, in a few hours, I am going to be going to my daughter's elementary school where my wife also teaches because they're having PE, so gym with your person today.
Oh, that
So
sounds like a nightmare.
So I'm gonna go and before that was completely told to me this morning of like, hey, you're gonna go do this, and I'm like, okay, I guess I am. Anna said, hey, Dad, you know about PE with your person today? And I was like, nope. And she's like, yep, well, you're doing it. And I was like, okay. And she's like, just so you know, at school, there's people there that tell me what to do. And I said, okay. And she's like, so when you're there, you don't need to tell me what to do like you do at home.
Yeah.
There's already people there to do that job. And I was like, I don't understand this threat. Like I'm just gonna come in there and be like, "Hey." That's all I have of that. It just tickled me.
See how it plays out. There's probably a bit in there.
It
You have
just
to like
floored
go
me.
to gym. You have to go to the worst class, gym. No, thank you.
No. She also told me, she's like, we have assigned spots in there. And if you forget where your assigned spot is, the teacher, Mr. Myers, and I was just like, where's this going? She's like, he reminds you where your spot is. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, seems reasonable.
She's like, Dorothy yesterday forgot where her spot was. And I was like, yeah. And she's
Classic
like, yeah.
Dorothy.
And then
Kids always.
Mr.
forget spots.
Myers showed her. I was like, all right.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah. And she's like, yep. I'm like, cool. I guess we're moving on with our day now.
Good story, little girl.
Yep. I mean, it's basically how half my stories go, but
Yeah.
usually I have voices.
I haven't done anything in my kids' school like that since they switched schools. There's a bunch of like background check stuff you have to do before you can go like in during the school day and do stuff. And it is like a pretty like it's not just like one thing. There's like half a dozen appointments and whatever and websites to fill out that you have to do. So it is ADD kryptonite. It's like, well, I'll see you after you graduate, I guess. I don't know. I can't complete this.
It's not worth it.
It's just not. I mean, look, I would love to, but I all the parents got to go in last week. My older daughter, they were doing a project about Greek gods and goddesses where it was like a fashion show. They had to like put together an outfit and write a paragraph about their deity. So that was neat. We got to see that, but I didn't have to do gym class. Yuck.
Oh, how far do you go into the actual history of the mythology of of the Greek goddesses and stuff? Like how like where's the line that they're just like, and it's fun up until this point, and then when you get past this point, there's orgies, there's rape, Zeus is banging everyone,
They-
having kids left and right. There's shapeshifters.
Yeah.
There's
Well, they had some of the younger kids there for like first they just did like a catwalk thing. They just walked up and down the room in their outfits, and then they did the paragraphs. And after the walking part, they had all the younger like the younger grades went back to their class before they gave the presentations. And I don't know if it was because it's a long time for like first graders to sit there. It is stupid reactions. It is, boring. It's a boring thing.
Well, can I guess why it's boring? Because they're like, we're going to do a runway fashion show of Greek deities. Well, here's little Alicia wearing a toga, and here's little Scotty wearing a toga, and here's little Jasmine.
Well, they had
you
all
guessed
like
it, wearing a toga.
they had all like the symbols and stuff for the different ones. I thought that was neat. But yeah, when they were doing, because you're right, some of that is messed up. So I was surprised because she's in 6th grade. So like some of the deities, when they're like recapping their stories, obviously because it's like middle school, they washed over a lot of it. But there were a couple where it's like, oh yeah, then I had a kid with my dad, and then that kid murdered my other kid. It's like, ooh, getting spicy. It's 6th grade
spicy
at 8:30 in the morning.
Soap
All right.
opera. Yeah. Distinctively remember in 5th grade, things getting a little saucy. We were split up, boys and girls, for the sex education. And our sex education in Northern Kentucky was not good.
It's probably pretty thorough, I would guess. It was probably really,
Yeah.
really got into the nitty gritty of it all.
Mm-hmm. And we were shown a video where it was a little boy. There was a scene in a bathroom, and other kids left the urinals, and one kid remained. And then the kid who was still at the urinal turned around, I guess, before we hopped into this bathroom in this school to film these little kids. He had already zipped up and put away, because when he turns around, he's in his pants. But this 10-year-old kid looks at the camera, straight down the barrel of the lens of the camera, and says, Tommy's penis is bigger than mine. Does that mean I'm less of a man?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, even when I was in 5th grade, I was like, this don't feel right. I don't think they should be filming kids in a bathroom talking about comparing dick sizes. And it's just like, hey, look, buddy, stop looking at Tommy's schlong while you're in the bathroom at the urinal with all your friends, because penis length is not going to be your biggest concern when kids start realizing that you're like staring at their dongs while you're going to the bathroom.
I mean, check them out. See what the competition's working with. I don't know. It's fine.
I like it. We each give, for the should daddios keep on doing comedy Reddit post. You had your opinion, I had mine. I'm like, quit looking at little kids' dongs, and you're just like, just do it. Just
Yes. Well, I think
we're each side of the coin.
I think it was the first or second episode we talked about going nude at the gym, and you hate it because you said you're repulsed by the human body.
Old man balls.
And at my old gym, it was pretty common to be walking back there and there's just old balls hanging out. But since I switched over and been going to Planet Fitness, I've not seen one naked dude at Planet Fitness. And there's also usually like younger, like my other gym is usually just like adults, like, but there's like teens at Planet Fitness. It's like, well, yeah, I'm not gonna get my junk out here, but they have like, there's a little changing room across from the showers, so you don't have to like go to the locker room to the shower like wet, I guess is the thinking. But yeah, just go in there. I don't want anybody to see my butt. I mean, I want a lot of people to see it, but I don't want them to be like 17 and see it,
18. This is for 18-year-olds and up.
No, I just want
You
other
can't-
old
you can't
dudes to see
deal.
my balls.
You can't deal with this tickle ass.
They can't handle what I got working back there.
No, nobody can. Nobody can deal with that.
It's unsurmountable.
You think you should go on Reddit, r/comedy, or
I wonder
however
if there's an
Reddit works?
Planet Fitness and I can be like, hey, is it cool if I get my butt out? Or is that, are we doing that here? I'm going to look. Let's see
I
if
like
there's-
that. That's one of those questions. It's like, hey, is it cool if I get my butt out? It's just like, is it cool or are you allowed? Yeah, you're allowed in certain areas that we have designated to be naked. Is it cool? No, it'll never be cool. Like,
It's cool.
who has a cool butt? Like,
This
it's
guy.
just like, yeah, get that butt out. It's cool. I'm sure. I like that our podcast is just going to be turned into now us just looking up different Reddits and subreddits and commenting on it. Oh, are we going to be positive about comedy and
We
on
should
this
definitely-
episode?
We should be positive about nudity. I think
Yes.
everyone should get their butts and balls out in the locker room all the time.
There are quite a few comedy shows that are naked comedy shows. Would you do one of those?
No, a buddy of mine he runs like the big one in Brooklyn, and I don't ever have any intention of being like, hey, Billy Procida,
Can I get some stage time?
Can I do that one? I don't want to. I don't want to be naked and do my job.
I have zero want, need. What if someone said, we'll pay you $5,000 to do 20 minutes completely naked?
Hard pass. That's not enough money. What are you talking about?
10,000.
What did I forget what I said I would do for $10,000 a couple episodes ago?
Well, I've got
Where
this
you're
list
like,
here.
oh, I wouldn't do it for $1 million. I was like, I'll do it for $180. I don't care. Part
What
of it,
would you do if you came out nude? Would you stand up and walk out? Would you stand up and
I've
do
seen-
comedy?
I've seen people criticize it as like, oh, why? Like, I have no problem that it's happening. I just don't want to do it.
No
you
problem.
know? Like,
No,
they're like,
sure.
oh, why do comedy shows need gimmicks? I don't know, because it gets people out. Like, it's honestly a fun idea. I would go to it.
It's those nuts out too.
Yeah.
Not only gets people out, gets nuts out.
But what's weird about it, as like, oh yeah, I would go watch one of those. The problem is if I go to the New York one, I would have to like confront one or more naked friends. You know, like every time they post
People
a
that
lineup, it's like,
people
yeah, I
that
know
you
some of
know,
those people.
you
I mean,
know, clothed.
I know Billy who hosts it, and it's like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've done a couple shows with him over the years. I think he's very funny. I don't super want to see his hog, you know, but yeah, I think I would rather go to one in a city I don't know anybody in, you know.
Oh,
I don't
with
want
like
to see
your burner.
I mean, I don't want to go with the burner account. But I wouldn't
What's your
want to do
name?
one in I don't know. I wouldn't want to do one. Well, I would be cold. Honestly,
I imagine they probably have it a certain temperature.
well,
Like, do they hang out though? Like after the show, do they
no, I
like
imagine
how
there
comics hang
are
out?
robes in the green room, you know?
Okay.
It's probably the system. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a big drive to be nude around others. When I was in Budapest
Mhm.
last year, I went to the thermal baths, and there's like a nude area that you can go in. You got to be nude in the nude area, and I saw it, but I went there with my sister, so
Cool.
she's like, "What's over there?" And I was like, "Oh, you can't wear any clothes over there." I was like translating the sign, and she's like, "But what's in there?" I was like, "It's a lot of the same stuff. It's just with naked people." And she's like, "Oh." I'm like, "Well, I'm not, because you're here. There's zero chance I'm going over there. I don't even want to be naked in the same building as one of my siblings." But I'm like, if you weren't here, honestly, I would probably do it. I'm in another country.
Because you're
No one else is around. No one here knows me. You know, buy the ticket, take the ride, go in the naked area of the Sechenyi baths.
well, you're submerged in water.
No,
Right.
I'd be floating on my back. have it pop up.
You be
like a
doing
little
you be doing
turtle
hand
head.
you be
Yeah.
doing handstands with your legs and your dong just above the water.
But also, I mean, we went to the bat. Like we were in, bathing suits in the other parts, and there's a lot of stuff where it's like, oh yeah, I'm glad I have a towel to put down and sit on here. I don't want to sit anywhere somebody else's steamy butt was 10 minutes ago.
Hot take as a middle-aged white dude. Nudity is in favor of men.
What? I don't know what that sentence means.
Because so you and your sister are at a bathhouse, regardless if it's overseas or it's next door
Yeah.
to where you live. If you both are participating in a jacuzzi, and like maybe you and your sister have drank a box of wine, no,
Yeah.
you're both in a jacuzzi, and you are wearing trunks. You are just covering up your pelvis.
My
She is
penis and
covering
balls,
up much more. Yes, much
And
more
butthole.
than in your butthole. Butthole.
My penis and
She
balls
is
and
covering
butthole.
up much more
Her
than that.
balls and butthole.
But if there was next door, it was a naked jacuzzi, you could do that by just removing your swimming trunks. And if you're submerged in water, for the most part, you being nude doesn't really change the experience. But if your sister is naked, she has tops and bottoms, and it's more like, oh, this is salacious. Like, I don't think you would probably feel that awkward by just being bare-chested around your sister.
No, I mean I was already in this story. 'cause I
Exactly.
was just walking
So that's
around
what
in a
I'm
bathing
saying.
suit. I mean, but you say that like you've never rewound the Cynthia Stevenson in a hot tub scene of The Player 40,000 times while you were in college. Like you can, the movie The Player, the Robert Altman movie.
I'm familiar with the
scene
movie. I don't.
There's a scene in The Player where Cynthia Stevens and Tim Robbins are in a hot tub together. And I feel like she navigates the water line pretty skillfully in terms of like,
Yeah.
how much am I showing in this scene?
Yeah.
I
You and I have very different movies of what we grew up. So my dad, not only a cinephile, but not so much of caring about anything beyond the stars or just the movie. Like he doesn't care about directors, writers, producers. Like he doesn't get into the movie. So I don't know. I'd call him a cinephile. He's a fan of movies, a fan of television, fan of pop culture. Pretty surface level fan. But he had on VHS a lot of old pornos. Pretty classic ones like Debbie Does Dallas, Beyond the Green Door, Taboo 1 through 4, or how many ever sequels there are. Some of the pretty Deep Throat he had. So he had those in the room that was his office on the second floor. And I knew where they were. I would watch them, masturbate, because when you're watching old porn, it has this thought of, or I mean, maybe not everybody, but I definitely had the thought of like, I'm probably jerking it to dead people. Like there is somebody dead that I've jerked it to, or someone's grandma or whatever. But my dad also had, and I would lend out those tapes. I was like, oh my gosh, you got to see, like Friends. I was like, Debbie Does Dallas. Like this movie's fascinating. Like before,
the cinematography is incredible.
the acting, the story, like that they put so much into it, because at that point, when you're a teenager, you are already looking at porn online, and it's pretty hard and fast. Like I like a storyline in my porn, and it's because of growing up on these 70s porns. But my dad also had in the bedroom with my parents, there was this cabinet that he had locked. So porn's in his office. If you can find them, free range, not a locked door. A dresser that had a little cabinet door in their bedroom he had locked, and inside there was like softcore. So like movies like Embrace with a Vampire with Alyssa Milano, Wild Things with like Denise Richards and movies of the like, and he locked those. So there was something about those, and it did have celebrities that I was familiar with for the most part, that those were the movies that I was like trying to find the key to get out and like rewind and fast forward. So then if anybody's ever watching the tape in full later, like the tracking would be bad in
Right.
those specific scenes because they would be rewound and fast forward so many times. But so the player was yours. That was your Jorkin.
No, I just specifically, because you were mentioning the hot tub thing, I remembered that specific scene.
Oh,
Because she's like pretty
her
deep.
nipples are.
She's not, it's not like waist deep water, you know? Like,
Yeah.
you kind of, people relax in a hot tub. Like, you, for the most part, I feel like the boobs would also be covered.
People relax in a hot tub.
Yeah, you don't
I just
sit
like the idea of
just
a,
upright, like you're like laid back and relaxing.
sounds like an SNL sketch where someone gets in the hot tub and they're just not like relaxing. It's just like, hey man, you want to get out? Like you don't have to be in here. It's just like, no, I'm enjoying this. Like really? Because your body language is not showing that you are liking this experience. But to go back to, nudity is sexist. Like the way that nudity is handled. You don't think so?
No. That's
You
like
don't
the
think that there's a
default
double edge
state
of between a male being
naked.
male nudity? Yeah, I know, but I'm saying the way that we in America view nudity. I can go run outside without a shirt on, and I'm not going to get arrested for indecency. Your sister, on the other hand, if she went running outside in like a public area without a top on, she's going to get arrested
Yeah, that sucks.
for public indecency.
I
Yes.
thought-
So
I thought
nudity
you
is
meant
sexist.
just like the platonic ideal of people being nude ever is oppressive. to-
No,
I'm like, I don't.
no.
But yeah, I don't know. Get them out. You know, everyone just walk around naked all the time. I don't care.
Like, I don't want to talk about my sister being naked
Yeah,
anymore.
stop bringing it up, weirdo. Yeah, I don't care for that. But yeah, dicks out for Harambe, whatever. Get him out. I don't care.
So when I was after I had the sleeve surgery, and within a year and a half, I lost about 140 pounds. Out walking in the city, around the neighborhood during nice weather, I would constantly not wear a shirt.
Yeah.
For sun, for tan, for just to not wear a shirt, because we as dudes have that luxury of being able to do that. And filmmaking partner friend of mine, Nick Hyance, was just like, oh, put on a fucking shirt. And I was like, why does it bother you? I was like, does it bother you because I'm not in shape? Because I like have hanging skin and this, that, and whatever? He's just like, no. He's like, I just don't think, I just think it's weird. I was like, okay. And then one time we were out walking and this dude came by who was ripped, in good shape, and looked good without a shirt on. And Nick turned to me and was just like, no, you're right. It's because you look sloppy. He's
No,
like, I'm cool with it if you're in shape. I'm like, I thank you for admitting
Upon
it.
the introduction of a second example, yeah, no, it's just your gross ass body specifically that I don't want to see.
Yeah.
Get them out, everybody.
Are you working on any new bits or any new material that goes with your new intro, which I'm incredibly jealous of? That I tried I sent you a dumb, low-hanging joke to possibly be my new intro, to be like, I'm not ready to have kids. Unfortunately, I have twin 1-year-old boys and a 5-year-old daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And you were just like, well, that's kind of something I'm already doing. Have you
Well, I haven't
developed any further?
been doing it.
Oh, no?
No, that one, the dad versus daddy thing. That's what we were talking about a while ago, where it's like, oh yeah, if you and I are doing a show that we have titled the Daddio Tour, that people knowingly bought tickets to, that joke will work there.
Oh, okay.
But when I do it at most places, I feel like it is too specifically about parenting that doesn't work. Where like so much of my material is about my kids, is about being a dad, just default, just because, you know, write what you know, that's what I know. But I don't think for the most part, it's like, well, yeah, you don't need to be a parent or have kids for any of these jokes to work. But I feel like how it feels being called dad versus daddy one feels a little too, you kind of gotta have gone through it for it to work. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, the joke I opened by saying like, oh, like, I don't think I'm ready to be a dad. I do have 2 children, but that's not what I mean. I was ready to be a father. I think I'm good at it. I was not
Yes.
ready for the first time one of my children called me dad instead of daddy. And like, that's
Yeah.
the lead into the thing, like, oh, like, dad picks you up from school, dad picks you up from jail, daddy helps you, you know, ride your bike, dad teaches you to drive a car, that kind of stuff. Where it's like, it felt, even I mean, that was one of the last things I wrote before the pandemic hit, because I remember, because I was doing a show in Manhattan that was like 4 parents and kids. It was like, hey, bring your kids to the comedy show, we're doing it at noon, everyone's gonna have a great time. So it's like, oh, like, this fits pretty well with that. But it felt like so written compared to most of my other material, where it's like, okay, I got to make a list of 3 examples of how it would be different. And it's like, I don't know, I'd rather just tell you something that happened. The part of that joke I like is where I talk about, it was when my daughter was letting the dog in. I was like, sweetie, can you let the dog in? Because he's whining at the door. And she says, okay, dad. But then when I say it on stage, I'm like, okay, dad. I make her sound like Ike Barinholtz. And it's like, well, that's what it felt like, you know, like it that was the first time she did it. I'd been daddy for, at that point, 9 years, I think. So to like have it switched up so suddenly, I was like, no, go to your room. That's the part where it's
But
like,
so
I would
you're
rather you call me Glenn, honestly.
for your new intro of like, I'm working on being a
Yeah, I've
better
been working
person.
on what that like, I would love to get it down to kind of a checklist, to just every time, these are the things I need to be mindful of. These are the specific things I'm going to do. I did do one last week where, because I've been talking a lot about Mr. T on stage, and I've been drawing pictures of him. So one of the things I wrote on my set list was, show everyone your picture of Mr. T that you drew today. And because I've been using the sketchbook for set lists lately. And I was like, it's in here. I can just flip the page and show everyone an honestly pretty good drawing of Mr. T. So it's like, yeah, just show everybody the Mr. T drawing. And I would like, because I had at that point had already talked about him, and then it's like, oh yeah, I can do this too. Like, I can draw pretty good. I'll show people. But I'm trying to think of like new bits specifically that have come out of it. I've been trying to find how to tie it to bits that I would want to record, is probably the more honest answer. Of God, I don't have it with me in within reach, but it's like, well, some of this I know leads into like the thing, it's ask someone a question is one of the things, but I'm like, I don't want this to be crowd work, like because I don't like I don't like watching clips of comics be like, oh, what do you do for work? Because I don't care what your job is. I don't if it was interesting, you would be up here talking about it, you know, like and then that leads into the joke about how I don't know what one of my best friends does for work, and then I realized I don't know what most of my friends do for work. And it's like, well, I could ask, but I'm sure they've already told me. I've just not. Once they start talking about it, I just check out because.
But now, and if you were to ask, and they tell you, and you're like, well, you know that I told you, and you're just like, "Ah, okay, and now I've made it weird by asking. I'm gonna forget again, and
Yeah,
so now this is a thing of like, Glenn doesn't care.
which is true, and I mean the base the baseline of like what this whole thing is like, I think I have to try to be better at being interested in other people so that I can be a better comedian, because so much of my stuff is just talking about myself and my life, as like, oh, this interesting thing happened to me. I'm going to tell you about it now. But the other side of like of just more universal observations is like, well, I don't care. I don't care. I don't want to do that part. But I do think like I should probably know what my friends do for work. Like I should probably have some level of interest that I inherently don't have. And I keep using the jobs example because like that I think people are like, well, yeah, jobs can be boring. Like I feel like I don't lose the audience completely if I'm like, man, hearing about people's jobs is boring, right? I think enough people are on board with that. It's like, man, I also don't care what your kids' names are. Like or some
I was
other
just getting ready to say that, or how old they are, because
Yeah.
it's like, you know what? I don't care because I don't hang out with your kids.
Yes.
Or I don't conditionally know you because you had kids, unless that is a friend from school
Yeah.
or whatever. And then I feel like if you did know their job, if you did know more things about them, that would make it weird.
Well,
And if you knew a ton of stuff about this person who wasn't a friend, not conditional, of children or children going to a thing, and now we see each other every now
I
and then
did get
because
one good line.
you're Sarah's dad.
Yeah.
Like all I need to know is that you are Sarah's dad.
Correct. That's so many people that I have to interact with. Is like, oh, because you're my kid's friend's parent.
What is the base level information that I need to store in my brain that, like when you said ballistic X versus Severn,
Yeah.
ballistic, I knew the name of the movie based off the subtitle you gave. I need to make sure that dumb stuff like that stays in my brain so I don't have any more space
Yeah.
to know anything more than the base level of you are Sarah's dad,
Right. And
because I'm a bad person.
well, my daughter's my one daughter's friend, like we spend a lot of time with her family, so it's her dad or brother. So it's like, yeah, like I know a lot about this guy because I spend a lot of time with him. So like I do know what he does for work. We've talked about it. And it's like, oh right, like this guy is now like legitimately my friend. He's not just like, oh, you're this other kid's dad. It's like, no, like I'll hang out with you regardless of children. But especially with like other comics, it's like we have this one thing in common, right? This is a thing that we all do. We talk about this one thing. We also have lives outside of comedy, you know? Like if I'm at an open mic and I'm the one that I'm hosting, typically after the mic, a couple of us will walk to a local falafel place, get some food, talk. And it's usually about comedy, but like we'll mix it up sometimes. Sometimes people will talk about like work or family, but oh boy, do I have a harder time paying attention to those, you know? Like
Were you getting ready to say shawarma?
I was, but I don't
Before?
remember if that's specifically what they have on the menu. I always get falafel because I'm a vegetarian, so that's the thing on the menu that I can
Oh.
get. But I know they
I thought
they
you
have like
side-
chicken and lamb and stuff.
I thought you sidestepped shawarma because you didn't want me to think that you go to the same place where the Avengers go
Yeah.
and they eat post credit sequence.
No, it is I couldn't remember if they actually had it there, but it is like it's a Mediterranean halal food place. It's good. Sizzling Bites in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, if anybody ever wants to get some falafel. The problem is order the falafel before you get there because they don't keep it at the ready because no one else orders it, I guess. I will go with like 12 people and they will all get their food like pretty quickly and I'm sitting there waiting for 20 minutes while they hand make falafel. I was like, I appreciate the freshness, but you know, I'm going to start ordering before we walk over there.
When comedians are together, a topic or something or an observation will be brought up, and then it's fun to riff to see how we each approach. We usually, in my experience, you try to find where the distasteful or taboo line is and see how close you can get to it, and there's a comfortability that everyone feels safe because you are a bunch of comedians talking. But I'm the same way, that I don't really care unless we're discussing this as a way to break it down and find the comedy in it, of what your life is because we are only together conditionally because we are all doing comedy.
Yeah.
But I think some of that also plays with that weird fake rule that you and I have talked about, where you're all supposed to act like you don't have jobs other than comedy,
Yeah.
or that your whole focus is this. The question I want to bring up to you, though, is you are doing the open mic because of you want to get better at being a person and also an area of stand up that you feel like you are not as good at. Have you developed anything now with this open mic that you do feel like you're getting better and it is fueling the direction you want to go to being a better person slash comedian?
It didn't really work last time. So the mic's every other week, because it's
Mm.
not, they don't take it seriously at at the venue is the a thing I've been arguing with them on for God years. Because it used to just be like, oh, we'll do like stand up open mic will be the first and third Thursday, and then the second and fourth will be like an improv jam. And then I'm like, right, but sometimes there's another one. There's a fifth one sometimes.
Mhm.
And they're like, oh, well, like we'll just make those months, we'll just throw off the calendar for the rest of the year. It's like just
Mhm.
once a week, just once. That's when everyone will know it is. I'm not doing calendar math to figure out, oh, is it tonight? I don't, but they at least for my tenure of it, it is just going to be every other week rather than
And it's hard too,
first and third nonsense.
without sounding patronizing or micromanaging or condescending. You want to be like, okay, do you see where this might not be the best way to do business? If you go to a burger place and they always have burgers except for this Thursday
Yeah.
where they only sell pizza, if I know that they always have pizza on Thursday, and if I want a burger and it's Thursday, I'm not going to go there. But if every now and then this place sells burgers and occasionally they decide whatever they want to just like, it's not good business. There's not good consistency. So if you can't then bitch about, well, I guess because they're not for profit, they don't really care about
I always
having the
look at it
consistency.
as, I mean, the reason I don't like it is because having ADD. I was like, hey man, if I just knew this was Thursday nights or whatever, it's every other Tuesday now. I'm like, if it was every Tuesday, oh, that would really increase how frequently I even think about coming here. But since I'm hosting it, I have to go, you know? But the other thing is it's a bucket and they cap the list at 20 comics.
Good.
So, I'm fine with there being a cap. The thing I don't like, I'm like, if I drove to a venue to do their open mic and I didn't get a chance to perform, all right, good luck. I'm not coming back. And they do, it's not 40 names go in a bucket and 20 get pulled. That I would have not agreed to host it. So I'm like, we need to figure out a way. And a lot of like mics in Philly, you pre-register for, like you sign up online up to, let's say noon that day. There's a couple days window where you can sign up. And I was like, just do that for 15 of the spots. You can sign up online. The rest you can sign up in person, because not everyone who signs up online is going to make it. Stuff's going to come up. You're going to be a no-show. If that happens twice, you don't get to sign up online anymore. But I brought it up to the comics when we were all eating after the show, and it wasn't everyone who was at the mic. It was like, I think 4 of us, and I think all 3 of them were like, ew, no. And I was like, here's the thing. I don't care. I don't care what you think. I don't. As the guy who's hosting this now, here is what I think makes this work better. And they're like, well, we don't like it. And I was like, well, I don't give a shit. Host your own. But I'm also like, I'm hosting this as just like a work for hire thing. Like, this is not my show. It is, I'm not.
And we have technology to make things easier for signing up. Like, you don't have to be that crazy person who the only time you perform is the open mic, and that person gets there at noon and hangs out until 7:00
that's the
to
thing.
sign. Like,
So last time, a comedian friend of mine, Chris Jones, he I think he just moved to Philly, is moving to Philly soon. He's from the Northeast PA area. came down at like 6. Sign up start at 7. He's the first one in the building besides like me. I don't think my co-host was even there yet. He shows up, he's waiting around, but the way it's like, all right, well, it's 7 o'clock, so the list is open now, so everybody go line up. And I'm like, so the dude who's been here since 6 o'clock is just, I hope he gets in line in time. Like, it's the system sucks the way it is. But again, it's not, I'm not running the show. I'm just hosting this existing show. I can't unilaterally make these decisions. And the downside of it being at this arts nonprofit is like, there's like 4 people I have to get to say yes to any changes that I make. I can't just be like, hey, we're doing it this way now. Like, I should be able to, as the host of the show, I should be able to curate the list. I should put that list in an order that to me seems reasonable. And everyone's like, well, oh, but then you could do like favors for your friends. But yes, I could. And I would. Absolutely. Would I do it all the time? No. What I would do is, let's say there's 20 comics. 10 of them I've never seen before. 5 of them are friends of mine that I know do well consistently. 5 of them are people I've seen before, but maybe I have a little less faith in. I'm going to spread my 5 friends out throughout the show evenly so that I know at least every 4th or 5th comic, someone good is going to take the microphone. I'm not going to be like, oh, all my friends are here. All right, you guys are all going first and then you can leave. No, because then you have a great 25 minutes of an open mic and then 2 hours of garbage. Like, no, you space them out. Like that's, or yes, like there was another comic showed up. They wanted to go and then just couldn't wait anymore. They had to leave. So it's like, well, if I knew you had a heart out, yeah, I would have pulled your name. But it's also, look, I'm not the prestige, but I can fake a bucket pull, you know, like Jesus Christ. If it's to act like that is somehow universally leveling, like, come on, what are we doing here? You know?
I love the idea of fairness. And we've talked about that of any place that has a clear cut direction or path to working with them or performing, whatever. Like, I do like that. But this idea of fairness in comedy, or of like where someone's like, I want to go and do this open mic where it's a sign up and it's not a guarantee that I can perform, but I also have a heart out. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Don't do the open mic that night. Like, you don't have to do 10 minutes on stage or whatever, how much time.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. They're like, I'll come if I can get up, I will. But if 9 o'clock hits, I gotta be out. I can't wait to go 18th out of 20.
Then you go.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And they were like, it wasn't a big deal. They were like, hey, I gotta cut out. It wasn't like, I'm like, but I couldn't say, oh, say something next time and I'll get you up early. But again, because it's
one
like,
show.
Oh, you're gonna start doing favors for people? Yes. That's the reason you host a show.
It's the benefit. The one show that I book once a month that I've mentioned near Indianapolis that I headlined the first one and have been emceeing all the other ones. This Friday, Gabe Kia, good comedian, is headlining, and I asked my one friend who I have performed with quite a bit. I was like, hey, would you mind coming and emceeing so I can feature? Just because I wanna do the feature set.
Yeah.
As we've discussed, it's a different animal. And it was like, yeah. And he completely understood like why I would want to do that. So like comedians typically get it. So there is this thing of like, well, if you're hosting an open mic and you're more familiar with these other comedians, it's kind of that unspoken thing of just like, well, yeah, but it's not at the detriment of anybody else, or no, you're not expecting anybody else to jump through hoops to make you happy. You're running the show. You're the host master. That's how it is. And like you said before, there's not really an audience, right? It's comics performing for other comics.
At this one, there is typically at least a couple people. Like most open mics are just comics doing shows for comics. This one, I mean, last time we had 10, I thought, like legit audience members just hanging out. Great. One of them did sign up halfway through. And I'm like, so I also started my intro to stand-up class started on Sunday. And the thing I tell them and tell everyone is like, look, if you're thinking about doing comedy, you're not sure, if you're nervous about getting up, go watch your local open mic.
Mhm.
Just don't sign up, just go and watch it, and you will realize most people are pretty bad at doing comedy. You will be filled with confidence. And I think that's what happened with this dude. He went, but in his set, he talked about it was like his grandfather, uncle, or somebody's like, you should, like, they're dying. He said, I don't know how true this is. He said like his grandpa's dying, which is like, you gotta go try to do stand-up comedy. You're funny. And I was like, I don't know that I believe that ever really happened, but it was like halfway through the show, and he comes up and he's like, hey, is it too late to sign up? And I was like, no, you got to fill this thing out, throw your name in the bucket, you're good. Had a great set. I was like, you absolutely stick with it, come back. But if the list filled up, the answer would have been no, because there's 20 spots. I think the 2 times I've hosted it so far, I think we've had 18 and 19 comics respectively. Like, so not quite full, but
Wait, this dude is going to be taking your stand-up class.
no, he came to the
And
open
when
mic.
okay, so he came to the open mic, but part of his set was that his grandfather wants him to do comedy, or like dying wish is do comedy.
Yeah, I don't remember if that was the exact
And
relative.
he wasn't sure though.
Well, that's the
until
thing.
midway through.
I think he was on the fence. He was nervous about doing it, because it's intimidating for most people to stand up in front of a
It's
crowd.
your grandfather's dying wish.
It's a thing I keep hearing from. Yeah, but he's already dead, So it was like,
Oh,
Grandpa wasn't
okay.
in the room.
He already disappointed him. He already disappointed Grandpa.
For sure.
He already
But-
disappointed Papaw.
I think what happened was he went wanting to do this thing, wasn't sure he was really going to have the balls to put his name in a bucket, watched 5 or 6 people, including me, have not incredible sets. And he's like, oh, that's it? I can do that. And that's why I tell
They're
people,
funny because
go watch an open
I would
mic.
think, I'm going to say that I would think the exact opposite, where I'd just be like, oh, I'm not doing that. But my first college audition in the theater department, I was pretty nervous to audition as a freshman, because you also kind of know, like, you're not going to get a part, or maybe you get like a very small part in the play,
Right.
in the college play. But this dude went up and did his monologue and ate it, like forgot, and then apologized, said his name, and then sat down. That instilled so much confidence in me. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
you
that's what
can
I'm talking about.
suck. I'm like, I'm gonna do better than that. And then like went up and did it. But there's also a part of me that's like, oh, I don't know if I would want to add if I was watching comedy and I was just like, well, I could jump on this show now. I'd be like, no, I don't need to make this
Yeah.
torture longer. Like,
Well, part of it, I mean, part of the reason I want to host is like, the host spot is rough. You're the first one going. You are like shutting down a bunch of conversations halfway to be like, everyone shut up. Comedy's happening now. So it is hard to have a good set when you're the host. So it's like, yeah, okay. It's I've done enough shows where it's like, I can have one rough set every 2 weeks. I'll be all right. It's not gonna.
It's not gonna,
crush me.
yeah, hurt your site. Well, this is exactly why I asked Kim, my comedy friend, to MC this Friday night, is because I was just like, yeah, I've done this enough with the MCing. I really want to see, like, if I do a tight 20 minutes with this stuff that I want to do, not having to worry about like getting the audience on board and watching and their judgments of it's the first person, they're probably not going to be the best. Like, there's a bunch of psychological stuff with it too. But I love that the guy at your show who wants to impress dead grandpa, that like he's like, you know what, these guys suck. It's not like I'm not going to be any worse or whatever. I want to get up there and do it and make Papaw proud. That he thinks he's going to finish his set and like Star Wars, look into the audience and see Force ghosts of his like 3 lineage, including his Papaw, just like nodding and smiling like Luke at the end of Jedi. And he's just like, I knew this was the right choice.
Yeah.
You think that guy's going to continue?
I hope so. He genuinely had a good set. Seems like a nice enough guy. But I don't know. It might just be like, you just do it one time and, never again. But it is that thing of like when you hear comics get interviewed and they talk about the first time they did an open mic, most of the people who are still doing comedy are like, yeah, it went great. That's why I kept doing it.
Yeah.
If it was bad, I would have stopped. But you have a good first show, then the crappy 2nd through 10th shows mean a little less because you're like, well, it went good one time. So if I figure out like, then you're just always chasing that dragon of like, look, it worked once. I got to figure out what do I need to do. Where for me, like the first time I ever did one, I did one open mic in college, did not tell anyone I was doing it. Also didn't prepare anything, didn't really understand how any of it worked. Went bad, as it should in those circumstances. So then when I wanted to do it in earnest in 2009, I'm like, well, my friend says he's going to go do an open mic. I'll go watch and see how it works. And then it was like, he had a terrible set. A bunch of people had bad sets. And it's like, all right, well, if I come back next time, I'm not going to be the worst one. Even I did this video at an influencer event. There's like a paint class place that just opened up in Allentown, Pennsylvania called Hawaii Fluid Art. Thank you for having me. But they're like, hey, if you want to come, you can like paint a mug or like a canvas or whatever if you want to bring somebody. So I brought my mommy. She did a canvas and I wanted to do a mug because I'm going to get more use out of a mug than staring at
World's greatest dad.
The problem is you can't, it's just, you're just like dumping resin on it as it spins. So you couldn't, detail was a little tough. I'm supposed to go pick it up today actually, because it like you do it and then it has to like cure or whatever. But I went to that and I was like, I'm going to do a mug, but I don't want a bad mug. So I'm going to watch the other people who are doing it. I'm going to watch a couple mugs get made and then I'm going to do it, which is how I approach anything. I want to watch someone do the thing and then I will have a better idea of how it works and what I should expect. And then I think I will do a better job. And I did, I think I nailed it. I think I nailed the mug. I feel like part of the business model for the people who run this place is you tell everyone they did a great job, but I think I really did. I think it looks great. I did.
Well, your mommy said you did
my
well.
mommy said
your mommy's like, yeah, good job, Glenn.
My mommy was proud of me. She did a very nice painting as well, but I wanted the mug to look like the Red Room from Twin Peaks.
Oh, cool.
So like the zigzag pattern, but it gets like really distorted from the resin and the spinning. But I think it resembles enough like that. If everyone's like, what's that mug supposed to be? If you say the Red Room from Twin Peaks, they'll be like, yeah. You know?
I like the hypothetical of the world where so many people are going to see this dinky ass mug that you made at this place.
Oh,
They're just
that's what
like,
I'm going to be sipping from next week, baby. Guaranteed.
Ah, yeah, buddy. So what do you think anybody in your class? So in the first class, do you have anybody get up the first class?
I
and
make
say
them all
anything,
like
or?
introduce themselves. You know,
Okay.
you all have to address a group of people day one. Next week, I don't remember if I told them this or not, is you have to talk for 5 minutes. I don't care what it's about. It doesn't have to be funny. I'm going to make you stand in front of the room and talk for 5 minutes so that you can feel what 5 minutes in front of a crowd feels like. Typically, it's like, so the homework assignment from week 1 to week 2 is find a late night set from a comedian you like, and then send me that, and then we're going to watch it and talk about it in class. But it is also like, start thinking about what your material is going to be for your grad set. You don't have to write it out or anything, but like, just come in with like topics or ideas. And then I stand them up.
I could help you,
hit me, Daddio.
You stand them up. I stand them up because they are all flaccid, just goo bodies with no bones. I prop them up. What I was going to say is you should make it mandatory that they also have to subscribe, rate, and review Daddio wherever they listen to their podcasts.
Sure, I will now. Well, I do. There is like essentially a reading list, but it is about half podcasts at this point of just like, here's, not homework. You don't need to experience any of this media for this class. But if you're interested in stand-up comedy, if you're trying to take it seriously, read these books, listen to these podcasts. And I feel like if I wasn't the host of this show, I would be like, absolutely, that should go on there because we talk about doing comedy most of the time.
Most of it, we usually bitching about corporate shows, but
I had a great one last weekend.
did you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You text me and because so this is the resolution of the flight you had to take day of, and we've complained about that. But this is a corporate show, so yeah, I would love to hear about
how I
it.
don't like traveling. I mean, I don't like flying. Period. Having to do it day of is like, God.
Oh, unless it's a single engine plane, which I'm sorry, we do have to address that we are hosting a cursed podcast.
Yeah.
Because Wednesdays, when we record, the first time it was talking about David Lynch, and then he died the next day.
Yeah.
Mike Flincham then brought to my attention that 2 planes went down after I discussed about how. So what? Do we have to watch like what we say on here? Are we manifesting bad juju?
No, but let's keep bringing up Seinfeld and Bill Maher and just see what happens. You know, we're gonna get it right one week.
That is awesome. You just have these little voodoo dolls of Seinfeld and Bill Maher. You're just
I brought them up in class because the assignment is send in a late night set because they're getting ready to do a 5-minute grad show. So I want you to find a coherent 5-minute set, not 5 minutes from a special, whatever. 5 minutes.
Because it's going to be clean. It's going to be clean. It's going to be television clean, which is a good way to start off anybody. If anybody's like, well, actually, the way I talk is this, this, and this, and you're like, cool, for this assignment, 5-minute television set, a late night set.
Well, that's not for the grad. Like, I don't care if they swear or whatever in the grad show, but in terms of like getting ready to do a 5-minute set, you should watch people do 5-minute sets rather than, watch a Tonight Show clip with Nate Bargatze, not an hour-long special. You can still watch the special, but watching the shorter set is going to, I think, help you more in the project of writing a 5-minute stand-up set. But yeah, so I flew out to Minnesota. Had to wake up.
Did somebody send in? Somebody send you a Seinfeld clip?
I got sidetracked. Yeah, I did tell them. I was like, if you send in a Seinfeld clip, that's fine. It will turn into about 20 minutes of me complaining about Jerry Seinfeld. You can send it in, but just know that's going to happen. And then the one woman asked, she's like, what do you not like about Seinfeld? And it's like, we can do the 20 minutes now.
Okay.
It's still going to happen. Because last time I did the class, I think it was 3 in a row. 3 people sent in, thankfully different Seinfeld clips. It wasn't just the same one 3 times. But it's like, God, this guy. And it's, but I told her, I'm like, it's mostly the dating a teenager in his 30s thing, but it is also like, stylistically, it's not the comedy I enjoy. That's not why I dislike him as a person. There's lots of people who do comedy that I don't enjoy, that I try to voodoo doll out of existence on my podcast. But it's like, that's the reason I find him so distasteful as a person. But then even the comedians in cars being rude to waitstaff thing, but also like, oh, did you ever notice how like Pens do this? I don't care, man. Tell me about your life.
Which is funny because that is not to just poke a bear. You were like, last episode about Buster Keaton. You're like, just be funny. I don't care about your pathos. And it's just like, okay, but don't you think when there's emotionality connected to the comedy? Yes. Oh,
I said
you did. You said make me funny. I don't
Buster
care. Do your jokes have a house fall on you? I just listened to it because I wanted to remember what you said.
My point was Buster Keaton is better than Charlie Chaplin because the movies are funnier. That I stand by 1,000%.
And you said, just give me the comedy. Do your basically
movie?
physical comedy. But I'm saying, and now you're saying, oh, Jerry, quit with the observations of just the humor.
But
okay, we can have because I am a big proponent of the emotional resonance is a big part of what hits.
I think if it makes the joke funnier, absolutely. Like there's
really?
So I have, you've seen me do it, but I have a joke where uh, I use it as the example when I explain how I write jokes to the class, and then I talk about word economy because it's a joke that I wrote to do a one-liner madness show, but like the joke that I do isn't a one-liner; it's longer because I think it adds to the emotional connection of the joke, which is the
Don't say it mockingly. Don't say it mockingly like that.
the joke is,
I
God, you sound horrible. Your voice is disgusting.
I know. I don't know what it is. And then I'm going to go to my elementary school, my daughter's elementary school, and I'm gonna be like Harvey Firestein,
Yeah.
just be like, hey, children.
It's so the joke basically it's like, oh, when I became a dad, I made a list of words I would never call my children, but lately they've been acting like a real pair of number sevens. And the joke is it's just a dumb joke of like there's not a list, right? There's not a number seven. And sometimes dumb people in audiences have been like, I don't understand. One lady literally raised her hand. She's like, wait, I don't understand what's a number seven. I was like, remember from earlier, there's a list, but there's not. But it's just like there's
It's
words I'm not
comedy.
going to call my
Think
children.
of the
you know?
top words that I would never say out loud as referencing my children. So if you have levels of anger and it's colors, think of it that way, but with words.
Well, I mean, number seven was the funniest number to say in the joke. Is like that's.
Sure.
But I didn't make a physical list. You know, it's just like, yeah, I'm not going to call
Comedy.
my kids a bitch. You know, like. But
And is that the number word? Is that the number one? No. There's
Right.
probably a
are
couple
there really
other ones
seven?
that would
I've
be
not
way
really
harsher.
thought about it, but there's like, yeah, there's a couple things I know I'm not going to call my kids. That's the list. But number
But
seven,
again,
saying number seven is the funniest.
it's what I go back to earlier. The specificity of you or thinking that you sat down and made a list
Right.
that makes it funnier. But again, I push back on there is emotion to that.
Right, but
Right?
that's the one-liner version, and then the actual one that I would do on stage is it's slightly longer. It is like, when I became a dad, I made a list of words I would never call my children because it's a harsh world out there. Other people are going to be mean to these little girls and call them things. I don't need to be one of them. But if I'm being honest, lately they've been acting like a real pair of number sevens and longer, right? So the word economy thing of like, oh, you got to take out that bit about it being a harsh world because it's not a punchline. It doesn't serve. I think it does. I think it delays the punchline, builds a little bit of tension, adds a little emotionality where I highlight why, like a little bit without saying what the words are, give people a little more time to think about what they might be. Why don't you want to call them? Like, well, yeah, you know what? You probably shouldn't call your kid a bitch. Like, what are you doing?
I would guess as someone who does things in the comedy world, if you presented both of those jokes to me and you would say, well, which one's funnier? And I would say, well, obviously, yeah, the word economy, the first one's quicker. So if you're doing a 5-minute set or a television set, that's the one you do. But I would guess the reason why you make it longer and it's not about word economy is the extra emotion and the little bit more of the world that you are proposing to us because you are going to probably say more things that connect to that idea
Yeah, I
that
think it
isn't
gives
just
it.
this one line joke.
I think it gives it more of a
Hey,
point of view, establishes more of. I mean, as much as I don't like to think of myself as a character on stage, as much it establishes more of that
mhm.
character of like, oh, this guy's a good dad. Like I need people to think that. I mean, psychologically, I need people to think that because I need them to think it so I can continue existing in the world. But in terms of just like the showmanship of it, a lot of jokes that I have kind of rely on people thinking I'm a good dad.
But what I'm saying is, in that when you do it as part of the longer set and it's
Yeah.
not the one line, are there more themes or specifics that connect to the world being harsh and not like, or is when you say it in that setup or in that part of the joke, do you say anything else that connects to that idea?
That the world
Or
sucks.
what when you say that, when you give that extra bit of information that you don't have in the one line, are you connecting when you move from that joke on or anything that came before that fits under that umbrella of like, look, the world is harsh enough, blah, 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 but they're acting like a real couple number 7s.
I
Do you then
a little
is the
bit,
next thing?
but it's like stuff that
That's why
kind
I
of
think it exists.
I think it's stuff that I'm trying to think of where it goes in the set.
Yeah.
Like I did it at the Minnesota show that we keep getting sidetracked from. Did it there, and it is like, oh, this is the part of the show where I will talk about my kids, and
But I do think it's a great representation of the 5-minute late night set versus the hour, because the 5-minute, you're trying to get to the funny as quick as possible
Yeah.
because you don't have that much time, and that's the juggling of it all.
And that's true,
is that
absolutely.
you do hope.
If I get booked on the Tonight Show tomorrow and I put that joke in there,
Yeah.
it's going to be the short version of the joke.
Yes.
It is, lower stakes if I get asked to do a 5-minute spot somewhere. I'm going to do the shorter version. I'm going to fit more jokes in the 5 minutes. But if I'm doing an hour, I have the room to be like, I'm going to throw another sentence in this joke. I think it fits overall stylistically better than if it's just like, well, you have one very short joke out of 58 minutes of essentially 4 different stories. It's like, yeah, I don't know. But the Minnesota flight, the flight was fine. I don't like having to do it. I did get so the booking agent who booked my flight day of the show, also just booked in like basic ass economy. And I was like, just give me the money that it would cost, and I'll spend a little bit more money to like pick my seat like a human. Because if I'm not sitting in the aisle seat, I'm not going, essentially. I'm not asking a stranger permission to get up and pee, So
I'm just going to do it in the seat.
Aisle seat every
They're just
time.
going to have to smell my urine. Yeah.
So I had to pay to upgrade to pick a seat. And then while I was doing that in the app, they're like, oh, for like $40 more, you can have access to the United Club I think it was, I'm trying to remember, it was 40 total or 40 per flight, but it was access before and after your flight. So 4 times I would get to go into the United Club, both takeoff and landing. And part of what I hate about the airport is you have to get there early and then you're just waiting and sitting around, but there's not always seats and it's uncomfortable. And I just end up like pacing an airport for an hour and a half. And it's like, well, I don't have anything to do. I might as well buy lunch now. And then lunch is $30. So it's like, all right, this actually seems like not that bad of a deal. So even if it was 40 per flight, that's like $20 a time getting into the club. And they have food. The one in Newark was better stocked than the one in Minnesota because it's a much bigger airport. But there's like a full buffet at the one in Newark. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll get actual breakfast. They also all the Diet Coke I could drink in both locations, which is all I ask for. If I drank alcohol, it's an incredible. If you drink alcohol, it's an incredible deal because it's included. So like 2 drinks, you're golden. But it made the whole experience of having to go to the airport less horrible. So it's a thing where I understand it is like the most privileged ass shit to be like, well, just get a pass to go into the lounge, but for me, a guy who hates it, I think it is I think it's worth it. But that made the whole, I was less stressed about having to go to the airport knowing there was a less crowded room I can go to. That really helped. And then the flight itself, like I said, fine. I got into Minnesota, rented a car. All went pretty uneventful, except for me being incredibly stressed out about the thought that my flight's going to get delayed, or I'm going to get to the rental car counter, and even though I reserved one, they're not going to have one. Everything that could go wrong. I get there, I get to the hotel, and then I realized, so I told the woman that I spoke to at the company, I was like, I'll send you a text when I land. I apparently texted the wrong number because I get to the hotel and like 5 minutes later, she's like, have you landed? And I was like, oh yeah. So but it was the same area code. So I must've just typed it in wrong. I was like, sorry, I texted someone in Minnesota knows that I got here.
Someone knows I'm here.
But I'm like, I'm in the hotel. It's 10 minutes from the venue. I can come whenever you want. And she's like, "Oh, can you come do sound check at 4?" And I was like, "I can, but I was gonna take a nap." And she's like, "Yep, I'll be there in a little bit." And that was like 45 minutes after this phone call. So I took a shower and stuff and went over, got ready for the show basically. And then she gets there. She's like, "Oh, did you have a chance to take a nap?" I was like,
No.
because of this. But then there was like a good amount of time in between the show. But at that point, it's like, if I go to sleep, I don't want to sleep through an alarm and risk missing it. So I just wrote out a set list, went and got dinner, just kind of killed 2 hours, went and did the show. And I think what made it a good corporate show is that it was set up well for a show. So much of why corporate shows are bad is because the people running them don't know how to run a show. So this was just like an event center banquet room, a place similar to most of the other corporate shows, but they brought in a stage and there were lights and there was a sound crew and there was they were also streaming it for like remote workers who couldn't make it to the actual event. So there's like a camera in the back and there's screens up on the wall. It was like set up really well, which is an expensive endeavor. Like they spent a lot of money to make that look good. But there was also like people from the company giving presentations and they were doing like awards and stuff. But it wasn't just, hey, we're just going to have all the fluorescent lights on in this Holiday Inn conference room while you kind of stand in the corner and sling jokes while we eat disgusting chicken. And it's like, well, yeah, that's... So when I got there and I saw the setup, immediately I was like, good, this is going to be, I mean, not necessarily an excellent show, but it won't be bad because of the setup. If it goes bad, it'll be my fault. But it went great. I didn't really do a lot of the list stuff of like, it was a lot of like, well, it's a corporate gig. We'll play the hits. There was a couple things that I wrote down where it's like, oh, make sure you mention this. I absolutely didn't do it. Which is, I mean, that's one of the things on the list I'm trying to be better about. But it's like, oh, there is like specific, it was for a bank. So it's like, oh, I don't have like a lot of bank jokes, but I have a couple things that kind of reference money. Do those jokes. Forgot to completely. It ended up just being like a regular show. But it went great. They had a great time. And it was like, yeah, if you guys, it wasn't the first time doing it. I think they told me they had a hypnotist last year. They had a comedian years ago, or they had like a band. So like they've done different kinds of entertainment. They seem to understand that part of it. A lot of the time when I do corporate shows, it is just like, oh yeah, we've never had a comedian before. It's like, I can tell. Like it's based on how everything is, every decision you've made about how to do this, you've chosen poorly. And it's nice when it's like, yeah, you guys have done this enough times where I'm assuming, because people who, do events for a corporate bank aren't necessarily doing events all the time. It's like the one thing a year that they plan as an event. It's like, right, but if you do 15 of them, you learn a little bit every time. But so often when I get asked to do a show like this and you try to give them advice on how to run it, they don't want to hear it from the comedian. They don't think we know anything. It's also true of college gigs, but college gigs, I think, are more likely to listen. Like if I do a show at a college and it's like 4 19-year-olds in the auditorium and like, they're like, oh, we couldn't figure out how to get the house lights down. It's like, well, we have 45 minutes before the show starts. Let's figure that out. Like, here's what we need to do in this amount of time that we have to make this go well. They're like, okay, they're like on board. Doesn't always work, but they'll try. But if Johnny, the vice president of whatever, doesn't want to hear from some comedian he found online how to run his event, he should, because we do a lot of them. We actually know what we're talking about. where it's like,
But like
oh,
I sympathize with Johnny because he's the vice president of whatever. They don't clearly respect him enough to be specific about what he's doing.
Johnny's
He's just the
not that.
vice president or whatever.
But yeah,
But
the
I
people
know-
at the
I
bank
mean-
were great to work with. And I don't want to call them out specifically, but you know, it's tough to get me to be excited to go perform for a bank. But the people that I talked to there were great. And
And it's
do a lot
college
of
shows,
good work.
corporate shows, whatever. If it's like, oh, hey, so you guys have a mic stand, and they're just like, no, do you need it? It's just like, oh, why are you judging? Like, no, I don't need
yeah,
a mic
I can
stand.
do it without one, but then what am
But,
I gonna
yeah.
lean on?
Like, what? Also, like, what are we doing here? Like, are you trying to make the situation the worst? Like, are
Yeah.
you trying to make
Well,
everything uncomfortable?
I'm more forgiving of it at college shows because a lot of the times it is like the student activities students who are running the event are in that club because they want. It's usually the kids who want to go into entertainment in some capacity. So they are like, oh, like a professional entertainer is going to give me advice on how I can do this better. Great. But if you're just some executive at some company, you already think you know everything, even though you don't, and your job's completely redundant. You don't want to hear from some dummy about how you should do your job, even though you're bad at doing your job.
It's like, I'm paying you to come here. If you need anything that you don't already have, you should come with it. You should have like
Well,
a
even
little
that,
trailer.
it's like, hey, do I need to bring a sound system? Do I need to bring
Yes.
a mic stand? I have all these things I can bring. I'm not going to fly them to Minnesota, you know, but
That's my favorite is when you ask a booker, like an agency that we both go through, and I have been more often or not recently being like, do they have this, this, and this? Because again, that'll just make me feel more comfortable.
yeah.
And sometimes the response I get also isn't very cheery or nice. It's just like, well, they've done shows before, or it's a bar and they do this, or blah, blah,
means
blah, blah,
nothing.
blah. I'm like, cool.
Right,
You
that
are
could be
not
anything.
answering if they if they have that or not. We need to be wrapping up.
Yeah.
Also, I
to go
just
take my
got a
therapy.
call from the person who's going to be booking the Daddio tour.
Hell yeah.
And I said we'll call him back later. So
circustrapeze.com/daddio tour.
you can watch that Sizzy. So we're gonna hop off and hopefully hop on a call with him after you drink some more Theraflu. I will drink some
Yeah.
water.
You sound like
And-
RFK Jr., man. You got to get that checked out.
Gosh, he just sounds like he's gonna break down weeping. Like not crying. Like during his confirmation, like he just sounds like someone who's about ready to lose it.
Yeah. A little bit ready.
That's
to
what-
cry.
Do I sound like that? Like I just sound like I'm
Sometimes over the course of
Okay.
this call you have. But I'm going to.
I sound like I'm a balloon that's just like slowly losing its air.
No, because that's hilarious.
You are not. Thank you.
No, but Pee Wee does it on the show, and he does it on Pee Wee's Big Holiday, and it's very funny. He just lets out the air out of a giant balloon for a long time. It's funny every time. I'm gonna play the outro
Man.
song. Tune in next week
Okay.
for more of this.
It's the Daddio Show.
More of this.